Now, I have been immersed in the incredible work of Charlotte McConaghy, a fellow Australian writer and an incredible author. This book has made me feel a lot of things, and I've got a lot of thoughts on it, and I'm going to share that all with you today. Now, before jumping into this, I just want a quick note on the name of this book. It's called Migrations in some jurisdictions and The Last Migration in others. My copy says Migrations, but I know that it's called a different name in some other places. So if you've read a book and it's not called Migrations, just know you are reading the same book. I might even mix up the names during the podcast. So it's all good. Everybody nobody freak out if the names seem somewhat different. So a summary of Migrations. This is set in a world devastated by climate change and mass extinctions. We follow Franny Stone, a woman with a wild nature and a turbulent past, as she arrives in Greenland on a desperate mission to track what may be the final migration of the Arctic terns. By promising a fishing crew that the birds will lead them to the last remaining fish in the ocean, Franny joins the fishing vessel and they embark on a perilous voyage south across the Atlantic, filled with the dangers of the open sea and the gradual unraveling of Franny's dark past and her secrets. Now, firstly, what I want to talk to you all about is Charlotte's writing. Charlotte McConaghy's writing is absolutely phenomenal. It is lyrical in a way that I can't even describe until you've read it. I mean, I hope you've read it. I've read 2 of her books now, and I'm so deeply impressed by how vivid and how real her landscapes and her characters and her emotions and the world surrounding these characters feels to me. She does it in such a phenomenal way where the environment feels so real and so tangible in your hands. I felt it first when I read Wild Dark Shore, one of her other novels, and I felt it again in Migrations. I was like, oh my God, this is the exact same feeling that I got the last time I read a Charlotte McConaghy book. It's so distinct how she writes, how haunting and pressing it is when you read, just blows me away. There is so much rhythm to her writing. You get drawn into it, and all of a sudden you're just moving at the pace, and it's lifting you up and it's dropping you down. It's lifting you up, it's dropping you down. It's working you through this music type of writing. It's so wonderful. I've also been lucky enough to interview Charlotte, and I won't give too much away because it's coming up and I want you all to hear it for the first time from her. But she ran me through her history with screenwriting. So she went to university and did a screenwriting degree. And she talked about how in it, every single word, when you're writing a screenplay, every single word matters. There is no wasted words in a screenplay because you only have 90 pages to tell an entire story when you're talking about a screenplay. So there's not a single wasted word. There's not a single wasted scene. And that transfers over to her novel writing. It is so clear. Once you know that, once I knew that when she told me that and I knew that, I was just like, oh my God, I see that so clearly. When I read your books now, reflecting on your books, I see that so clearly now. But another thing that she does so well is she writes action really well. And this once again relates to her screenwriting, I think. But more than anything else, Charlotte's writing allows us to experience emotion so deeply. And in this book, we feel and we sense the heightened emotional state of Franny, the main character. This was such an emotional roller coaster of a book for me. I was high and I was low and I was feeling all of the feels during this whole book. I felt grief. I felt loss. I felt anger, sadness. I felt this really overwhelming sense of desolation. There was this feeling of loss. There was this feeling of something missing in my life. I felt this real desolation in the world around me and this real sense of pain in this book. And it's not just emotional pain, it's physical pain too. We see these characters, getting thrown against the deck, experiencing these harsh weather systems and experience the pain of that, of the physical pain. But then it's also the pain of their loneliness And that's not just with each other, that's within the world. So it's this real feeling of pain during this book. But probably the most prominent feeling of all was grief. I think this was a book about grief. And when I speak to Charlotte, which again I won't get into because I want you to hear it from her, but she talks about grief, and she talks about how she was going through a really large period of grief in her own life when she wrote this book. It is the grief of losing love. It is the grief of losing our humanity. It is the grief of losing our world. It is the grief of losing our future. That was so impactful during this book. I felt that so intensely. And I think that that's what made me feel such desolation, that sense of grief. This connection of the personal to the environmental, the internal to the external, it leads us to some of the most interesting ideas in the novel. And it leads me straight into our main character of Franny. And Franny as a wild being herself. We were looking at these wild beings in the world, some of the last wild beings in the world. And yet Franny was also one of the last wild beings in the world. For me, that just sort of, really hit home that we cannot separate our experience of the world from our experience of ourselves and our experience of our humanity and our human experience. I really feel like the lines were blurred. We were experiencing this world that was being torn apart, that had been eating itself alive. And then we also experienced that with Franny. And Franny's resilience to persevere, to adapt against pain, against adversity, is the same as that of the Arctic terns. We are truly just wild creatures at the end of the day. And we see this so many ways: her continued desire to escape, to move, her connection to nature, the strength and the turbulence of her feelings, even her moments of violence. And that all makes so much more sense when you think of Franny as a wild character herself. She's out there and she's throwing herself into the water every chance that she gets. And I think for me, that was just her trying to experience flight and her trying to experience that sense of weightlessness and her trying to show to us that she herself is just a creature and she no longer wants to be bound by the laws of humanity, and she no longer wants to struggle. Through Franny, Charlotte invited us to consider our place in the world and our place as animals and what responsibilities we have. And in this context, it really asks us, what is freedom and what are our true needs? Now, if it seems that migrations is really heavy and all I've talked about so far is really heavy themes, that is because this book is heavy and that's because the themes are heavy. But in saying that, this book also has hope. This book also has light. This book also has joy. And that runs just as deeply. And that's what I want to get into next. If there was something in the last migrations that really stuck with you that you just want more of, well, our good friends, sponsors, and fellow book lovers at Hachette have once again given us a hand-picked list of books that would be perfect for your next read. Starting with one of the biggest releases of the season, Land by Maggie O'Farrell. This may be coming up as a book club read. Eagerly awaited new novel from the internationally best-selling author of Hamnet, a sweeping, immersive story of family, survival, and belonging set in the aftermath of Ireland's Great Hunger. Rich with history, myth, and unforgettable characters, Land showcases the emotional depth and exquisite storytelling that have made Maggie O'Farrell one of the world's most beloved novelists. The next title is Arborescence by Rhett Davis. What if the answer to climate change was simply to stop moving and become a tree? In this mind-bending speculative novel by Australian Rhett Davis, a mysterious movement sees people putting down roots in the most literal way possible. For readers who like their fiction just a little bit weird, a little bit wonderful, and impossible to stop thinking about. Our next title is Villa Coco by Andrew Sean Greer. From Pulitzer Prize winning author of Less, Andrew Sean Greer delivers a warm, witty escape to Tuscany, brimming with eccentric characters, unexpected adventures, and second chances. Sun-drenched, charming, and impossible to resist, Villa Coco is the literary equivalent of a long Italian lunch with excellent wine and even better company. A good way to thaw out after our trip through the Atlantic. And our final title is Broken Country by Claire Leslie Hall. Come for the love story, stay for the twist that you won't see coming. A runaway bestseller, book club sensation, and Amazon's Book of the Year in 2025, Broken Country was praised by Reese Witherspoon as a masterly crafted mystery that will keep you guessing until the very last page. Combining the emotional intensity of a great romance with the compulsive pace of a thriller, Broken Country is a story of first love, devastating choices, and secrets that refuse to stay buried. So those are 4 brilliant books expertly recommended by Hachette that give us more of what we loved in Migrations. You can check the full list in the link in the description. Thank you so much to Hachette. Now, we've covered some of the heavy topics, but it's time to get to the light and the joy and the hope. And I first want to speak about love. Now, Franny is a wild character. She can't help being who she is at times. You know, she's difficult and she's troublesome and she causes people a lot of frustration at times, but yet she's still so loved for who she is. And people love her just the way she is. And there's a beautiful love story in this book with Niall. And Niall loves her for who she is. And Niall lets her go again and again and again because he loves her and he knows that that is her nature. He knows that her nature is to go, to be wild, to run, and he loves her anyway. He never tries to put constraints around her. He never tries to restrict her. He never tries to change her. He loves her for who she is, knowing who she is and knowing that that will cause him pain, and he still loves her anyway. And it is such a beautiful love, and it's a kind of love that I think we all desire in some way, shape or form, to be loved for who we are and to be allowed to be what we are without somebody else trying to change us so that we are more likable to them or that we are more convenient to them or we cause them less stress. I think that I thought that was one of the most wonderful things in this book. It was such a beautiful love that Niall had for Franny. And it just epitomized unconditional love in many ways. And there was also the love from the crew of the Sagani. They all loved each other. And, you know, even in the beginning, Franny came on and Franny sort of ruffled a few feathers, but they all had their differences and they clashed at times, but they all loved each other and they all had that common experience that kept bringing them together, and they looked out for each other and they cared for each other. And even when one of the crew of the Sagani were lost, you know, you felt that loss so deeply amongst the rest of the crew. It was a really impactful part of the book. I thought that was such a wonderful part of the book, that love, that found family, because it showed the best sides of humanity. It showed our ability to connect, to understand, and to still nurture each other. You know, in a book that paints humanity as selfish, as greedy, as destructive, this was something that I really clung on to. And as you journey with Franny and you begin to feel understanding and compassion for her, it asks you to extend that understanding and compassion to yourself. And there's one final question that Migrations asks, and it may be the most important question of all. And that is the question of hope. In the face of loss, how do you keep going? When everything is falling apart, who do you show up as? How do we choose hope, even in the face of hopelessness? And the answer to that in this book is you choose to. You choose hope, and you keep choosing hope. And even when it seems hopeless, you must choose hope. And that hits so hard for me as someone who has in their life at times seen a hopeless future and seen no hope for the future, We have to keep choosing it every single day. For so much of the book, it feels like Franny has given up. And this is just the last trip to a hopeless destination. But we see her heal. We see her rise again and again. And we see her keep choosing hope and keep going. Ultimately, we see her choose to live. She makes that choice. She chooses to live. It was a commonly repeated phrase through this book. Is look for the clues to life. They're everywhere. It's about choosing what we focus on. It's about choosing to look for hope in everything. It's about looking for clues about the truth of who we really are. Now, I hope that you loved Migrations. I hope that you resonated with what I said today. Maybe you felt different, and if you did feel different about it or got something else from it, let me know. But our next book for the Good Books Club is Land by Maggie O'Farrell. Now, this is one of the biggest releases of this year. Maggie O'Farrell, she needs no introductions. I have spoken about Hamnet so many times. It is a book that destroyed me. And I am so scared. It is the only Maggie O'Farrell book I've read so far. And I'm so scared to dive into another one of her books because I do not need that emotional devastation again, but we'll find out. So that is Land by Maggie O'Farrell. That is our next read. I cannot wait for it. If the storytelling is anything like Hamnet, I'm just going to absolutely adore this book. And I know that all of you will as well. I really hope that you enjoyed this episode of the Good Books Club. But I want to ask a favor of you. I want to start doing community episodes on our book club book. So what I'm going to ask of you is whenever you're reading one of our book club books and you think of something or you want to share something, record a voice note and send it through to goodbooks@tappedmedia.com.au. That's TAPT media, tappedmedia.com.au. Send through your voice notes to them. And you don't have to wait until the book club episode is out. Send it through while you're reading. So send through any ideas you had about migrations, but also send through anything coming up with Land. So when you're reading Land, please send through your audios because I want to start doing community episodes where we get to discuss this as a group and I can respond to some of your audios about what you think reading this book. Because at times I love talking about my experience of the book, but I want to hear about your experience of the book. So please send those voice memos through. I can't thank you enough for joining me on this episode of In the Good Books for the Good Book Club. If you enjoyed this book, as I said earlier, I got to interview Charlotte. She is phenomenal. And if you're looking forward to that chat with Charlotte, hit follow wherever you're listening to now, and you'll be notified as soon as it is released. I look forward to the next chapter.